Hello, everyone. This is Sincere of Sincere's channel. Um, well, you might find the title a little shocking, okay, and depressing. Um, but I'm going to try not to ramble in my short video that I'm doing right now. But it was two deaths in my family yesterday because I record this early on Monday morning, around almost 12:30 a.m. Um, well, one is directly in my family, and then the other person that died yesterday, was in my family, was married into my mother's side of the family. Uh, so, um, Yesterday, my mother's middle sister. My mother's the eldest sister in her family, and her sister that was born um, 11 years after her, died yesterday at the age of 73. Um, she had, it was rather expected, so it wasn't sudden because my aunt had been, her health had been declining for the last year. And when I saw her on Thanksgiving, I didn't think she was going to be very long for this world. Um, but my aunt, she had Down syndrome, and she lived to be 73 years old, which is um, well past the life expectancy of someone with that condition. And she was born in 1949, and my grandparents took good care of her. They never wanted her institutionalized because back then, a lot of people here in the United States, from my understanding, um, I don't know particularly with African Americans, uh, but uh, but people um, that had special needs back years ago, often they didn't know what to do with them, and they would put them, institutionalize them, and that would actually lead to their lives being shortened a lot of times, and because of abuse and neglect. But my grandparents refused to send her away. My grandparents were deeply religious people. They loved their children. They were all about family. My grandparents were a lot like Middle Eastern people. That's why I just feel such a strong connection to people in the Middle East, because family is so big over there. Um, and I've lived in Turkey. I've mentioned before that I've lived there, and so some African American families, in some cases, not all, but years ago, used to be a lot, particularly my grandparents. They used to be a lot like, uh, people in the Middle East. They got married and they cared about their children. I'm not saying everybody did, but more people did than the case is now. We've been really fractured as a people, and very little marriage, broken, homes that are broken. But anyway, this is more about my aunt than about the social condition here in the United States. But anyway, so my my aunt, she just apparently just died of, just apparently natural causes. Her body just started wearing down over the last year, and they did say when she was in the hospital, Monday, they brought her to my hometown because they live about 30 minutes south of here, and it's a rural area, and a lot of rural areas here in the United States, the healthcare is just either non-existent or just not good. So they brought her here to which is a small city. Uh, they said that she may have had a small stroke, not recently, but on back. They I don't know, maybe when they ran tests. And my aunt, who was my youngest aunt, who is my youngest surviving aunt, because all of my aunts now are dead now, except for one, my mother's youngest sister. They're all dead on my father's side of the family. But my youngest surviving aunt, who took care of her, she took care of her, and she looked after her well. My grandparents, when they were alive, they looked after her well, and she did she did also. Um, my aunt, it was sort of a strange situation with my aunt because, from what I understand, it people that have Down syndrome, they're often born with the condition. But my mother's story is this: is that my aunt, when she was born, she was completely normal. She said she was such a beautiful baby. She's so beautiful. And then what happened to her was is that she had a bout of whooping cough. And then she had a second bout of whooping cough. The second bout almost killed her. And after that, that's when they noticed that she wasn't the same. So I don't know. Maybe the whooping cough caused brain damage. I didn't think before I made this video to do any research on that because I'm just doing this video, just randomly on the fly. It's after midnight here, and I had did a previous video about my aunt, that she, was dying earlier last week, because when we were at the hospital, the nurse that talked to us, he was saying that he didn't think she would survive until Christmas. So she didn't. She died the week before Christmas. So, it was expected. And I just want to look back at the good times of when my aunt was alive. Her name was Irene, and we called her Irene for short. And when I think of Irene, I think of two things. A woman that my grandmother used to take care of that was an invalid, that was also her neighbor's sister. And also the Empress Irene in the Byzantine Empire and what's now Turkey. I always connect. To me, history is, it's like it's alive to me. It's like it does not end. History does not end with me, and stuff. But my interest is not so much American history and not so much African American history. I'm interested in African American history, but so much that we're taught about with African American history is always about slavery. The aspect of African American history that I'm interested in is more about, where did the Africans that were brought here come from and what was their religion? And I do know that a good many of them, their religion was Islam. So, but anyway, I'm deviating again. The second person that died was actually married to one of my uncles, also one of my mother's siblings. She was married to him at one point. That uncle died, I think it was 2012. I had just come back from Turkey, and he died the next day. He had surgery for blood clots. He seemed to be doing well after surgery, and then he just declined and died as well. So today she also died. She was a little bit older than me. My uncle was maybe a good bit older than her. They are divorced. He had been married before, and then he married her, and they divorced, and he didn't marry anymore, but she remarried. But yeah, she what happened to her was she had a stroke last year at home. Then when they hospitalized her, she had two more strokes, and then after that, she was pretty much disabled, incapacitated. She was never quite herself again. And then last month, my aunt told my mother that her son, who is my cousin, uh, called her and said that she had was back in the hospital with a stroke, and then she had bleeding on her brain, and then the bleeding stopped. Seemed like she was doing a little bit better, and then she died also this morning. So the way I see it is, we have to remember the good times because we all are going to die, and we have to try to remember the good times that we had with our family and friends that that pass on, that die. Um, Remember the good times because death is inevitable, and it's something that we all have to do one way or the other, whether it's through natural causes, strokes, illnesses, accidents. I want to try to avoid accidents if possible, but yeah. Um, So I still worked yesterday. I teach online. In an upcoming video sometime, I'm going to talk about what exactly I do as far as teaching online, how it works, what are the companies, the ed tech groups that I've worked for. So even though, we all the sad news we got this morning, um, we got it this morning, later this afternoon, I still had a very fruitful and good day teaching because I would prefer to keep working. I need the money, of course, but also we have to carry on. We have to keep fighting the good fight. And so later this afternoon, I had all of my classes were enjoyable. I would say 98% of the time my classes are enjoyable. So later this afternoon, a young Turkish man called me, and I asked him about, he's not a regular student, so I asked him about his background a little, asked him a little bit about himself, and he told me that he traveled around Turkey, and for his work, he was always traveling. He would live in different cities. He had that sort of Elvis haircut. He had a beard, and he was sort of dark, a little bit olive complexion, and so I asked him what was his hometown because he mentioned about Izmir. He said, no, I work there, have stayed there sometimes, but no, Izmir is not my hometown. My hometown is Mardin. Now, Mardin is a city in eastern Turkey. Uh, Mardin borders Syria, and it's in Mesopotamia. It's on the Mesopotamian side of Turkey. Mesopotamia is not only in Iraq, but it's also in eastern Turkey. Part of eastern Turkey is Mesopotamia. So he is from Mardin, and Mardin is a very interesting city. It's a city I really want to visit. It's very different from a lot of other Turkish cities. It's an ancient city. And all of Turkey is ancient. Okay. If you go, there's going to be some ancient stuff around if you go to Turkey. Okay. So if you're just walking down the street in Istanbul, you're going to see something ancient. Okay. Likely going to see it, or it's going to be nearby. But so he was born in Mardin, and Mardin is very different. He was telling me that he said there are many different people that live in Mardin, many different groups, and we are all very tolerant of each other. So Mardin is made up of Turkish people, Kurdish people, Arab people, Assyrian people, Armenian people, and also I was told by another um, citizen of Mardin. We follow each other on Twitter. He lives in Mardin, and he is a teacher. Also, there are Jewish people there as well. So it's a multi-ethnic city. It is an old city. Um, and he was telling me, not this young man, but the teacher, we follow each other on Twitter, that Turkey actually has 10 million Arabs. So the Turkish people in general, the majority are not Arabs. Okay. But this young man that I talked to, he was so friendly with the Elvis haircut, with the beard, and he was sort of nervous. So he was sort of wiggling and everything when he was speaking. He was so nice though, and I told him, "Oh, really, Martin?" He was so excited and happy that somebody knew about Martin because he said foreigners usually don't know anything about my city. And I asked him, I said, "Which ethnic group are you? Are you Kurdish? Are you Arab?" He said, "I'm Arab." I said, "Really?" I said, "Can you speak Arabic?" He said, "A little, but he said, I understand, but I'm not very good at it." He said, "But my father and my grandfather, they speak Arabic. They do." He said, "All the time they speak Arabic." And I was telling him Mardin was on my list of places I want to visit in Turkey because I've mostly just seen a good bit of Western Turkey, uh, from uh, from Ankara, the capital, Konya south, and over to the west. But I really want to visit Cappadocia. We call it in English Cappadocia. And if you are, if you're a Christian, you read the Bible, you may have read the word Cappadocia in the New Testament, and one of the letters in the New Testament, maybe one of the letters of Saint Paul. Also, also, uh, told him I want to visit Trabzon, Van, and Mardin. I said, Mardin, I really want to visit Mardin. He said, if you come to Turkey, he was laughing. He said, I will take you around. I will show you Mardin and stuff. So he's the second person from, I think third person from Mardin. There was one woman, she was Kurdish, and she's a filmmaker. And she told me that, she was from Mardin, and she said that if you come to Turkey, let me know. I will take you around. So yeah, he was really nice. I don't know whether he will come back. He says that he will. He would like to talk to me again. I sent him my schedule. He wanted to take a proficiency exam to see what level his English is. So I gave him two to take so he could make a comparison. Um, I gave him the links to two of them. So yeah, that was a happy point, because I always want to know where students come from. And the majority of the students that call on the app that I talk to are in or like in Istanbul and Ankara. But when there are other like more out far flung places in Turkey, I get really excited. I really get excited. But yeah, I'm going to end here because I didn't mean for the video to be this long. I was going to try to only make about 8 minutes or so. But yeah, it's so much of life is like that. You have to deal with the bitter and the sweet. Um, and I will always remember the times that my late aunt, when when we were young, I'm 60, when my mother's mother had 9 children. When we would go out and we meet on Saturdays, Sundays, the whole family would get together, eat together, go out and play volleyball, softball. My grandparents, my grandmother cooking in the house with my mother helping her, and my grandfather and my father together. And my father pretty much adopted my mother's family because he was not close to his family. So yeah, it was just I'm thinking about the good times. My aunt, she would play sports. She loved her music. She'd be in her chair with the radio listening and rocking in her chair, and she loved it. She never did go to school because back then, there were they didn't have in the government schools. Now they have the classes for special needs kids. But back then there was nothing. If she had been gotten some kind of education or something, she would have had to been sent away because my grandparents lived in the rural and they wanted to keep her at home. They really wanted to protect her, and they did a very good job about it. And in fact, the nurse at the hospital was telling my mother and my aunt that, it's amazing that she's lived to be 73 years old. She must have been well taken care of. And my aunt, who's, humble, she was like, I did my best. She was saying they did great. So, you don't throw away your family members. I know in this culture, people do, which is sad, and Americans miss out on so much. We really could have a very sweet life, but we're a stubborn people. We're a hard-headed people. And, but I have had a very special life because, particularly being African American, to have a very close-knit family that in many ways, so many ways, maybe we'll talk about later. My grandparents were a lot like Middle Eastern people, very much so. But anyway, I end here. So may my aunt rest in peace, and may the Lord have mercy on her soul. We have a merciful God, and everything. And she was, she was an innocent. She was she could have a temper at times, but if you didn't bother her when she was young, she wouldn't bother you. So anyway, I'll end here. This is Sincere Ray of Sincere Ray's channel. Until we meet again.